A while back, I did a video called Pricing Yourself Out of the Market, and I talked about how these different fast food places are charging people so much money that they are putting themselves out of business because people can't afford to eat there anymore. And this is also the same with a lot of sit in restaurants as well. But in this sequel, I guess you could call it, I wanted to kind of go a little bit more in depth in terms of giving specific examples and also in pondering the question of is it a matter of things costing too much or people feeling like this is just not worth my money. Now, with things like shoes and clothes and even cars to a smaller degree, people in general tend to pay out higher amounts of money, whether it be somewhere in the close to $100 or over for these different things that they believe are going to last them for a considerable amount of time. If it's clothes, it's something they can wear for years. If it's a car, it's something they can drive for years. So people are not above spending, hundreds or thousands of dollars on things that they feel are worth the value. But when you look at these food places and we start to kind of go example by example, it's just my opinion that burgers, at least by themselves, should not be over $10. I think a good price for burgers like seven, eight. An example of where this is achieved is a place like Wiener Schnitzel, where you can get two burgers, depending on what location you go to, but generally you can get about two or three burgers for around $10 or $11. Two usually for about eight, and then a third one can be thrown in there to put it around 12. And somebody could say, oh, well, there are places where they have, burgers that are bigger, which is true. The ones at Winter Schnitzel are not that large, but my point still stands that the fact that you can find somewhere where you can get this like a similar item but cheaper, and it's like part of that same fast food deal is kind of what I'm conveying here, that it is possible to have lower prices and then reap the results of it. Just as another example, I'm not the biggest fan of pizza. I like pizza, every now and again. But I remember I talked about in the video I did earlier this year how I went to Domino's and Pizza Hut at various points, Pizza Hut in particular, and I was shocked by the cost of one of the Domino's that was in, or rather, excuse me, Pizza Hut that was in my area. And I said that, I normally expect a pizza to be around 14, somewhere in like that middle tens, right? And I'm more comfortable with that price for a pizza versus a burger because at least the assumption I make is that the pizza typically will be enough food for me to eat throughout the entirety of a day, to have like two to three meals of it if I'm just eating the thing by myself. So it doesn't bother me as much to spend, that price for it versus a burger where in all likelihood I'm going to eat it once, right? One meal and that's it, and then I'll be hungry again. Um but I said, okay, Pizza Hut, Domino's, right? These places are charging depending on what location you go to. But I know that I've been to Domino's before, and it was like almost $20, and I've been to Pizza Hut before, and it was $30, and this isn't even with like delivery fees, which I expect to balloon the price. But then I go to a place like my mind's blanking for a second. It's not Papa John's, it's the other one, Little Caesars, and you can get a regular pepperoni pizza here in the great state of California. If you're not adding any sauces or anything, you can get a regular pepperoni pizza for less than $8. Maybe it's a little bit over eight with tax, but the point I'm making here is while I might like the variety that these other pizza places will have, if I have the choice of getting a pizza for either $30 or eight, or excuse me, seven, I'm going to pick the latter. Um, and in picking the latter, right, and getting that $7 or $8 pizza that I can again eat for multiple meals a day, I'm much more inclined to go back and get it the day after that, the day after that, the day after that. Because in my mind, I'm calculating the cost. I'm going, okay, if I, and I don't even, again, I don't eat pizza like this, but just hypothetical. Let's say I go to this Pizza Hut and I decide, you know what, this is going to be the only fast food I eat for the whole week, and I'm going to eat it every single day. If we round, because it's not 7 by itself, it's close to 8, but it's still under $8. If we round it to $8 and we multiply that by 7, that's $56. Now that doesn't sound cheap necessarily when you start like adding in all the days, because if you keep buying out, things will be, will reach the price. But for me, more often than not, it's usually somewhere around $60 for me to eat each week, for like roughly 200 something a month in food. And that price actually is not that bad when at least in my opinion, when I start thinking of, wait a second, if I get 2 pizzas from Pizza Hut, again, depending on what location I go to, it's going to be anywhere from $20 to $30, which means if I go to that same Pizza Hut that charged me $30 twice in a week, that's $60. Again, for 2 pizzas from Pizza Hut. But if I go to Little Caesars for an entire week, that's around the same price, but it's 7 instead of 2, and I can eat for the whole week. I mean, this is my point, that you might look at the lower price and go, oh, this is, man, they are killing themselves. But the fact that they're charging a lower price, which they frequently tout as like, hey, we don't cost as much as the other major pizza chains, incentivizes me to go to them more often, because I feel like it's actually affordable. And like I said, I have no problem, paying $8 for a pizza, because if it's just me eating it, it's usually more than one meal per day. Now, going back to the burgers, I'm someone who I've really been observing, like, I'm not, some extremely old person, but it's like I remember when me and one of my relatives used to go to Burger King, and he memorized the cost of our 2 burgers together. It was $14.57. And man, that was always my favorite thing about going over there with him. He just would always like talk to the I don't want to call, well, I guess the cashier or whoever takes the orders, and it's like, oh, I owe you guys $14.57. And I bring that up because, imagine my surprise. I haven't been to Burger King, in years, like at least since before the pandemic, going there a few months back, not the same one, but still going to a Burger King and buying a burger and getting charged $16. And the sad part is, this is becoming standard practice for these burgers to be, again, in the tens of dollars. They're not, Burger King's not the one that does. I'm not singling them out. I know that Fat Burger does the same thing. I remember me and my dad went there, and he just 2 burgers, $32. Um, and what I've tried to kind of explain to people is that even if I'm someone who likes burgers or whatever, there's only a certain price I'm willing to pay for a single meal. Um, and like, I forgot this place's name because I'm not as used to it, but there's another place called Wings Ferno, and basically what it is that I was hungry one Saturday, and I kind of was not wanting to go in the market, so I just ran in there to kind of see how I'd had someone who bought something from there before, and I went in that place, and my mouth almost dropped to the floor when I saw the prices. These bastards, and I'm not talking about the employees, I'm talking about just the corporation and whoever is in charge of the pricing of this stuff. These bastards wanted $14 for a burger by itself. Now on the menu they say it's $12, but then you add in the taxes and then it's 14. And they had the nerve, the audacity, the balls to ask me for a tip. And I looked at the I guess receiver of the card, right, when you put your card in, and I said, they must be nuts. Like, okay, if I'm at a Generally speaking, if I go to a sit-in restaurant, I'm a lot more likely to give tips because you have the waiter or waitress who's like going running back and forth between tables, and that's something that I can respect in the general sense of, at least if they're attentive to me, I'm more inclined to give them, 50 cents, a dollar, whatever the amount would that would generally be extracted. But and this is something with Starbucks too, when you're looking at, going into a place and buying something, from a guy who goes, "Hey, can I take your order?" That person does not need to be tipped, because what quality of service are they providing? Your exchange with them is the same cut and dry routine that they go through every single day. Hi, how are you? What can I get for you? Does that complete your order? That's what should be given a tip, really? And like, again, people would look at me and go, "Oh, you're mean and you're cheap and all." But honestly, if the food didn't cost as much as it does, and again, if they were doing something that was conducive to like actually having to work hard, I'd be a lot more inclined to, here's okay, extra dollar, $2, whatever. It's just again, the high cost of the food and the fact that they're just basically sitting there reading a script is why I'm like, okay, that's not necessary. I'm not, you guys are about to charge me damn near $15, $16 just to eat a burger by itself. And I mean, look at Raising Cane's. That's another place where you go there, $13 for a burger, and they're slightly better than Wings Ferno or Wings and for whatever the place is called, but they're not that much better. $13 for a burger, some fries, and a fountain drink. And man, they are. I mean, I think of all the places, that's the one that gives you the teeniest, tiniest bits of fries. I know for a fact those bastards actually count how many fries they give to you. It's nuts. Like, you are basically being given the equivalent of like someone taking their pinky and grabbing the fries out like two or three times to stick them in the box. I mean, it's not worth it. Like, if I take two people to eat at that place, we're gonna walk out of there with spending $40 for three burgers. That's almost $40 for three burgers. That's a good deal. That's something that people think is makes sense. And look, I maintain that I get it. I know that when people don't feel like cooking something, when people don't feel like having to go through the motions of making their own food, they don't want to bother with stuff. But then I keep saying to myself, okay, at a certain point, this this stuff is just not worth it. Um, and I'm seeing this with a lot of more subtle signs, like McDonald's and Denny's, for example, both have an equivalent of a value menu rather. I think McDonald's is one of the biggest ripoffs because what they've done is they've made their stuff cheaper, but at the but with they've shrunk the food for the shrinking of the prices. So like you can buy two burgers for $5 or six with tax, but the caveat is that they're so goddamn small you can fit both of them in one pocket. Just little stuff like that is still like cheap and ridiculous, but at least there's an acknowledgement by that place that like, okay, you are aware to some degree that you're like, you can't continue to operate in this way. If you keep making your stuff cost more and more, more and more people are going to not buy it. But with McDonald's, there's also the issue of them getting rid of the free refills. And I just want to like make this point again because I did a separate video about it. The whole point of buying a soda from one of these places, and Kane so far hasn't implemented this, but they might, who knows? They can only get worse after all. But the point of buying a soda from any of these fast food places used to be that if you dined in there, you could, eat your burger and your fries, and then you could just, hey, my drink's getting kind of low, let me get some more. And you could pretty much do that with no issue whatsoever. But what McDonald's greedy bastards that run it decided was that, okay, well, Let's see if we can basically dehydrate you enough to make you want to buy a second soda. And I know for a fact that they, I went in there one day with a mug to just get some, I think it was Coke, and they turned the machine off when they saw me try to get some. And I thought, how crazy is it that these sodas that cost them nothing, that they have big containers of, they would rather nickel and dime the people who are already have bought a drink from them in the hopes of like squeezing out another dollar or $2 or $3 from us. And that's the other issue I ran into, because I was earlier praising Wiener Schnitzel, but the issue they have that's like wholly independent from a lot of these other places is that they charge roughly $2 or $3 for a large fountain drink, and I just objected to that. And to this day, even as someone that likes them more than most of these other places, I have never subjugated myself to buying a soda from any of, from Wiener Schnitzel, especially because you can go to the market and buy a 2 liter, one of those big containers of, Pepsi, Coke, um, Cactus Cooler, 7 Up, any of these different ones. You can get one of those on average for anywhere from 2 to 3 something dollars. And it doesn't make any sense to me to buy a mostly watered down from all that damn ice, you know, drink from one of these places when I can again go to the market, get a 2 liter, and get the same drink except much larger. I mean, it is illogical, and that's again goes back to my same thing of just there's no value in it. Um, and really, just to kind of close this out, I don't need to talk about movie theaters. Their stuff is just ridiculously expensive. They do that on purpose, where they take any item that would be in a supermarket or a regular store and just seem to double or triple the price. But what I thought was interesting is that I kind of have a perspective of there's only a certain amount I'm going to pay for a drink. And when I say drink, I'm not talking about, some beer or anything. I'm specifically referring to non-alcoholic beverages, sodas, coffees, etc. And a good example of just the insanity of drinks was found in Chick-fil-A. I told the story of how for roughly 2 or 3 months, Chick-fil-A was like my main, fast food place to go to. Like I was going there several times a week, and I would always get the same thing. It was a burger, some fries, and a vanilla shake. And the vanilla shake, I remember, or shakes in general from there, were $2, so my meal would always be around like $11. I went there or it was like January of 2 years ago, and my little brother wanted a shake as well. And when I ordered him one, I ordered me one, and I got myself a meal. And this came up to like $18. Like, what the hell? I thought at first that they had overcharged me. Then I found out that they had raised the cost of the shake from $2 to 4, which made it, so much higher. It was either 4 or 4.50. I know at one point they went, it was like either 4 or 4.25 or 4, but somewhere like they doubled the price, but then kept it the same size. And that led to me never buying a shake from them again. And eventually it spread to me just not eating from there altogether. And that's actually another place where you can go and get a burger by itself for $7. So they're not even like on my radar in terms of who I'd mostly be criticizing. But it's like I like the shake. I thought it tasted good, but I'm not gonna pay almost $5 for a little itty bitty drink. And what's funny is that eventually I guess people stopped buying it enough to where they pulled like a bait and switch, like they made the drink bigger, and I was like, oh wow. But then they made it cost more. I think now it's like $7. And again, it's larger, right? But it's still, to me, is not worth it. I mean, if you're going to be paying $7 for a milkshake, you might as well just go to Starbucks. And that's another place I'm not even the most like avid coffee drinker. I like some flavors. I'm mostly like a vanilla person. I like to really just kind of make it sweeter and sweeter. But what I could not understand even back in my heyday of going to Starbucks. And I told this, plenty of times I went there and just didn't even, I would just go to the stream. And then if I really was thirsty or something, maybe I'd go and get a drink. Eventually I sat back and I said, I can go to some like certain gas stations and 7-Eleven as well and get a coffee for under $3, large coffees for like 290, 270. I prefer I think it's called Extra Mile, that gas station. I like their coffee more than 7-Eleven. My point is that if, again, this goes back to the same thing of like, if I know I can get coffee for less than half of the price of Starbucks, I'm just not going to use Starbucks anymore. And it's like, again, is it about me having a problem paying $7 for something? No, because I said before, I have no issue buying a pizza for $7 at from Little Caesars, right? So this is not about oh, I refuse to pay $7 for something. No, this drink, however much I might like it, is just not worth the price. It is simply overpriced. Um, and this is really the point I was trying to make with my video. See, people are acting like these high costs are something that has to be this way. Inflation and what. But again, my reason for not believing that is when I give you the examples of instances where you can go somewhere and get an equivalent item for a much cheaper price, and you ask yourself, okay, why the hell would I bother with the same, what is virtually the same thing, except way more expensive? Um, it's like maybe I could be tricked into thinking that pizza has to be, 15, 20, $30 if I couldn't get one from Little Caesars for 7. But it's like you can go to market and find pizzas that are cheaper than 20 or $30, there as well. You have to make them yourself, but you get the idea that there's still an equivalent item that is cheaper. I mean, hell, we talked about how KFC, they sell over here and they charge crazy prices for all the rest of their crap, but the one day they get a bunch of customers is when they have their Tuesday special with the 8 for 10, and how that's an example where the company has the option to make something cheaper. Otherwise, they wouldn't give you 8 pieces for $10. They just don't feel like they're going to be meeting their profit margins if they just have that as a regular thing you can just get throughout the whole damn week. So it's really a matter of corporate greed and this belief that people are just a bunch of lazy suckers that you can treat any old kind of way, right? Charge them all types of ridiculous money and they'll keep buying this stuff. I think the bubble will eventually burst. The ones that, like the slow learners, the ones that just refuse to see the error of their ways, what's going to first happen is that they're going to keep doing this crap where they cut hours of people, and they always make the people at the bottom suffer the most. And after that occurs, they're going to start closing down a bunch of restaurants just like all over, the different franchises that they have. That'll be the next phase. Again, to save some money for themselves, recuperate their losses. But eventually, if they do not make the returns that they would make if their stuff wasn't such overpriced garbage, they will close down. It might not be next year, it might not be in 5 years or 10 years, but you cannot have a business model that is overpriced, that is priced higher than what most people are either able to or willing to pay. I fundamentally do not believe burgers should be $13 or $16, especially with no damn drink or fries. I don't believe pizza should be $30. I don't believe drinks, be they a coffee, an icy, a soda, should be up anywhere above $4, and even that's pushing it. So really what I just want to convey here is that things do not have to be this way. It's not normal for people to have to spend almost $20 or $30 just to get something to eat. I'm not feeding a family of 5 or 10. I am a single person, um, and it doesn't make sense to me to be charged such obscene amounts of money just to eat. So pricing yourself out of the market is not just about something, in my eyes being deemed too expensive. It is about an item or a service you're offering that is simply not worth the price of admission or the price tag that you put on it. And we're seeing some signs of the bubble bursting. You had Jack in the Box announce they're going to close, I think, around 200 stores, and Denny's is closing a bunch of locations too. So there are signs that established and very long lasting companies are being hit by their arrogance and refusal to adapt to the economics of this era. But what's really sad is that this is basically turning into a thing where people are given the option of either going broke from just wanting to eat or having to boycott a lot of places that they in the past might have actually enjoyed going to. When people run businesses, I understand that they're there to make a profit, but I'm also saying that as business people, sometimes you have to let your ego, your desire for money, and your again arrogance not get in the way of you acknowledging certain realities. People are not excited or willing, in a lot of cases, to pay obscene amounts of money for food, and it's just going to keep coming back to bite them. And I'm glad, because I'm tired of people acting as if I'm crazy for looking at these prices and saying thanks but no thanks. Many times I've walked in to these different food places like the $30 pizza at Pizza Hut, or the $14 burger with no fries or drinks from Wings Inferno. I've walked into these places, and when I saw how ridiculous the prices were, I said, hey, I'm never coming back here again. I've honored that commitment every single time I've made it, because I'm between, again, the cost of rent, gas, there are simply too many other things that, whether I like to price them or not, I have to pay for. I don't have to sit here and get price gouged over food. It's disgusting.